images from Ghana tonight. Police in the Western African nation say a vehicle carrying mining explosives collided with a motorcycle and then blew up, potentially killing dozens, tearing through homes and shops in a busy area. The full death toll is not yet known, but these first images reveal the destruction was enormous. Tonight, new signs that the massive Omicron surge may be slowing down, but the threat is not. San Francisco is one of the latest places reporting a drop in cases, but 1,700 Americans are dying every day, almost all of those falling victim unvaccinated. And we are learning new details tonight about just how early Omicron may have arrived here. Damage control from the White House as President Biden tries to walk back statements he made during that marathon press conference last night, seeming to say a minor Russian incursion in Ukraine might be acceptable. But today he's saying there are no minor incursions. This as tensions continue to rise between Russia and Ukraine, with Secretary of State Blinken set to meet with his Russian counterpart tomorrow. We speak with a retired general, an expert on Ukraine, to hear what's at stake and what options the U.S. has. And first to heart, now kidneys. We look at how groundbreaking medical research is paving the way for the possibility of even more organ transplants from pigs.
You know, pigs have a lifespan of around 30 years, so the idea is when you transplant these organs that they will be able to sustain the life of the human for the remainder of their life.
Remembering comedian Bob Saget, our emotional conversation with the wife of the Full House star about what made him so special.
He just wanted to spread love and laughter, and he did it so amazingly, and I'm just so proud of him.
Hi Maggie, right now I'm flying from Indonesia to Sri Lanka.
And our Maggie Rulli speaks with the youngest woman to ever fly solo around the world throughout her history-making journey.
You've had to conquer so many fears to get to where you are. How do you do it?
When you're flying along and suddenly this challenge comes up, I can't say, I'm done, I'm out, I give up. You have to still land the plane. You have to make sure that you get down on the ground safely.
Got to land that plane. So impressed with that young lady. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We begin tonight with that showdown between the West and Russia, and the White House trying to dial back the tensions and clean up after President Biden suggested a minor incursion into Ukraine by Russia might be okay. Ukraine's president firing back today, saying there are no minor incursions. Russia's foreign minister and U.S. Secretary of State Tony Blinken are in Geneva tonight ahead of yet another high-stakes talk tomorrow, trying to stave off what some fear could snowball into the worst armed conflict in Europe since World War II. At this hour, tens of thousands of Russian troops have amassed on three sides of Ukraine. U.S. officials have been accusing Russia of planning a false flag operation. Tonight, our Ian panel is once again heading back to the epicenter of what President Biden hopes will not turn into a major international crisis. But as Ian saw firsthand several weeks ago, the signs of war are everywhere. We're standing by to talk with a former U.S. general who was a key player in the last conflict in Ukraine about why what's happening half a world away could have an impact on us all. But first, our Mary Bruce has more on the cleanup at the White House tonight ahead of that key meeting.
At the White House today, President Biden tried to put out a firestorm of criticism after these comments about a possible Russian invasion of Ukraine sparked international concern.
Russia will be held accountable if it invades, and it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion and then we end up having a fight about what to do and not do, et cetera.
Early today, reading from a prepared statement, the president tried to clarify what he meant.
If any assembled Russian units move across the Ukrainian border, that is an invasion. But it will be met with severe and coordinated economic response that I've discussed in detail with our allies, as well as laid out very clearly for President Putin. There is no doubt, let there be no doubt at all, that if Putin makes this choice, Russia will pay a heavy price.
The White House fully aware the president's comments triggered alarm among European allies and inside Ukraine, too. Ukrainian President Zelensky tweeting, "There are no minor incursions and small nations, just as there are no minor casualties and little grief from the loss of loved ones." Meeting with U.S. allies in Germany ahead of a critical sit-down with the Russians, Secretary of State Blinken tried to reassure America's partners.
If any Russian military forces move across the Ukrainian border and commit new acts of aggression against Ukraine, that will be met with a swift severe, united response from the United States and our allies and partners.
We're joined now by Mary Bruce from the White House. And Mary, the White House also clarifying another one of the president's comments yesterday. He was asked whether the midterm elections would be legitimate given Washington's failure to pass a voting rights law. His response, it depends.
Yeah, the president said that some of these restrictive new voting laws in Republican-led states are going to make it more difficult for some Americans to vote. And he said that could increase the prospect that the vote is illegitimate. The president said he is still holding out hope that they can pass some reforms here in Washington, but the White House today clarifying, making it crystal clear that the president is confident that the midterm elections will be legitimate. Lindsay.
All right, Mary Bruce from the White House. Thanks so much, Mary.
Thank you.
For more perspective, ABC News contributor General Robert Abrams joins us now. He was former commander of U.S. forces in Korea. General Abrams, thank you so much for joining us. You were also senior military assistant to the former Secretary of Defense during the last invasion of Ukraine. Right now, this centers on border unrest between Ukraine and Russia. How does a major conflict between Ukraine and Russia impact Americans here at home?
Lindsay, first, it's good to be with you. I think what everybody needs to understand is that based on the size, the scope, and capabilities of both the Russian and the Ukrainian forces that we're seeing, a major conflict will result in a level of violence that we have not seen in Europe for some time. Could be World War II, but in some time. The sheer destruction of infrastructure, homes, cities, loss of life, both military and civilian, as well as displaced civilians, will directly impact not only Ukraine and Russia, but economically will certainly affect Europe and have global reach to include the United States. And that's why we all need to be paying attention to this.
How could NATO and the United States respond as far as military involvement if there is a major conflict with Russia moving further into Ukraine?
Yeah, look, I'm confident that the NATO Military Committee has been briefed extensively by the Supreme Allied Commander Europe, General Todd Walters, who's also dual-hatted as our U.S. European Command, the EUCOM commander, which is a geographic combatant commander who reports directly to the Secretary of Defense. And I'm confident that Todd and his team have prepared and briefed a wide range of military options for these types of scenarios. Development of these different options for a variety of these scenarios, they've been in the works since Russia invaded Ukraine, annexed Crimea in February of 2014. So these are not newly baked options. These are refined options over many years, many commanders, and a lot of discussion between our NATO partners and the United States. And the key here, from a military perspective, is providing a range of military options so that policymakers and elected officials can make fully informed decisions. So based on what I'm reading and what I'm seeing in the news, I think that U.S. and NATO will be looking for options to provide military support to Ukrainian operations. And military support comes in the form of providing logistics, intelligence, potentially arms and ammunition, and maybe even continuing advising to Ukrainian forces.
In general, you, of course, dealt with a similar situation years ago. What's the difference between what you saw back in 2014 and what we're seeing right now?
Yeah, a lot of people think that this is a replay, and this is not a replay. So to go back in time, we have to remember the context. February 2014, following the ouster of the pro-Russian president of Ukraine, there was a short period of civil unrest, and also simultaneous to this was the Winter Olympics in Sochi. And within a week of the end of the Olympics, Russian troops were able to achieve strategic, operational, and tactical surprise by suddenly annexing Crimea and simultaneously conducting military operations to seize portions of eastern Ukraine. And we all remember this, right? These operations were unattributed operations by, quote, little green men, supported by heavy information and cyber operations intending to destabilize Ukraine. In my candid assessment, I think the world and we were all caught a little flat-footed in 2014. So fast forward now to January of 2022, that conflict in eastern Ukraine, that's been at a stalemate now for a few years, And in the last few months, we've seen a massive buildup of Russian forces, as the introduction said, all three sides of Ukraine, and direct threats to Ukrainian sovereignty. So there is no longer any chance for strategic or operational surprise. And I think if the Russians do decide to do something, they're going to look for opportunities to achieve tactical surprise. So we're in a much, much different situation than we were in 2014.
Sure, certainly not flat-footed at this point because this has been happening in slow motion for some time now. General Robert Abrams, we thank you so much for your time and insight.
Thank you.
And now to the pandemic. New evidence suggests the Omicron variant was in the U.S. long before the world even knew it existed. And even with hospitalizations still at a record high, there are more hopeful signs tonight that the surge is slowing down in parts of the country. ABC's Stephanie Ramos has the very latest.
Tonight, new evidence suggests Omicron was in this country before the world learned of the new variant. A CDC study found traces of Omicron in New York City wastewater on November 21st, 4 days before the variant was announced by South African scientists and 10 days before the first U.S. case was reported.
By sampling in wastewater, you can detect virus in huge populations. If we can identify a variant faster, we can respond more quickly and make sure that we reduce transmission in the community.
Infections in New York City have dropped 46% in the last week, but the city still has the nation's highest death rate because deaths and hospitalizations always lag behind cases.
I do think we are past the peak of the Omicron surge, but just because we're past the peak does not mean we're done. We have several weeks to go before the infection numbers really get low.
1,700 Americans with COVID are still dying every day, the vast majority unvaccinated, like Angeline Salcido, a 34-year-old mother of 4 in Oklahoma. Her mother says Angeline didn't know she had diabetes when she was hospitalized with COVID.
By day 3 of going to the ER for 3 days, my daughter was gone.
The family had put off getting the vaccine, but Angeline's death has pushed them to get the shot.
You're scared to get vaccinated, so am I. You know, I still haven't got vaccinated, but just that happening actually makes me want to do it.
Tonight, New Jersey's governor is warning healthcare workers they could lose their jobs if they are not vaccinated and boosted.
We are no longer going to look past those who continue to put their colleagues and perhaps, I think even more importantly, those who are their responsibility in danger of COVID. That has to stop.
Across this country, hospitals are struggling to care for 160,000 people with COVID. Nurses inside this Pennsylvania hospital say they are drowning in patients.
We're seeing 20, 30, 40-year-olds that are ending up very sick and dying, and they don't have the conditions that some of these older people have.
Still so many dying from this virus. Stephanie joins us now. Stephanie, even more new research out tonight on the placebo side effects from the vaccine?
Exactly, Lindsay. Researchers looked at 12 vaccine safety trials with thousands of people and found that 2/3 of volunteers who got the placebo reported things like a headache and fatigue, suggesting that those relatively mild side effects widely reported from the COVID-19 vaccine might not be as common as people expect. Lindsay.
Okay, good to know. Stephanie Ramos, thanks so much. Next to the new developments in the House investigation into the January 6th attack, the committee is now asking the president's daughter, Ivanka Trump, to cooperate. This comes as the National Archive has turned over White House documents after the Supreme Court denied former President Trump's claim of executive privilege. Here's ABC's chief Washington correspondent, Jonathan Karl.
The January 6th committee is asking to speak to former President Trump's daughter and top advisor, Ivanka Trump. Seen here backstage at the rally outside the White House shortly before the attack on the Capitol. In his speech at that rally, Trump repeatedly called on Vice President Pence to use his position presiding over the counting of electoral votes to overturn the elections.
And I hope Mike is going to do the right thing. I hope so.
The committee says Ivanka Trump was in the Oval Office that morning when her father had a heated phone conversation with Pence. I spoke to Trump about that call for my book, Betrayal.
There was a report, and excuse my language, not mine, it was in the report, that you talked to him that morning and you said you could be a patriot or you can be a Did you really say that, or is that a incorrect?
I wouldn't dispute it.
Really?
I wouldn't dispute it.
Also in the room at that time, Trump loyalist retired General Keith Kellogg, who told the committee Ivanka Trump turned to him and said, quote, "Mike Pence is a good man." Kellogg testified that when Trump supporters attacked the Capitol, Ivanka Trump repeatedly urged her father to speak out.
We have firsthand testimony that his daughter Ivanka went in at least twice to ask him to please stop this violence.
Today, a spokesperson for Ivanka Trump declined to say whether she would testify, instead referring to a portion of a tweet she posted on January 6th during the riot, saying, quote, "Any security breach or disrespect to our law enforcement is unacceptable. The violence must stop immediately. Please be peaceful." What her spokesperson didn't mention is that in that same tweet, Ivanka Trump addressed the rioters as, quote, "American patriots."
Kind of a glaring omission there. Jonathan Karl joins us now from Washington. And John, what are the chances that Ivanka testifies voluntarily?
Well, it would seem remote that she would testify against her own father, Lindsay, although the committee was very careful in this letter to say that they were going to narrowly tailor their questions. They would respect her privacy. They would keep the questions solely focused to the events on and in and around January 6th and what she witnessed there. And it is notable, as you know, as I pointed out, that statement from her spokesperson does not say no. It does not say that she won't testify. She has been engaged in something of a kind of a quiet campaign to make sure that people know that she did not agree with what her father was doing on that day. So, you know, who knows? I would still say highly unlikely, but not impossible.
Anything is possible these days. All right, Jonathan Karl, our thanks to you.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Now to the federal trial of 3 former police officers charged in the death of George Floyd. Just today, a full jury was selected and opening statements are set to begin on Monday. J. Alexander King, Thomas Lane, and Tu Tao are charged with using their positions as police officers to deprive Floyd of his civil rights. These are the men who worked alongside convicted murderer Derek Chauvin. 2 of them, King and Tao, face an additional charge alleging that they knew Chauvin was kneeling on Floyd's neck but did nothing to stop him. Lane, who does not face that charge, was the rookie officer heard on body camera footage asking if they should roll Floyd on his side to help ease his breathing. The men have pleaded not guilty. The federal courthouse in St. Paul, Minnesota will not allow cameras inside, but we are joined now by ABC's Alex Perez to bring us the very latest. Thanks so much for joining us, Alex. So tell us, what do we know about the jury that will be seated in this trial?
Yeah, Lindsay, the judge had allocated 2 days to seat this jury, and they were able to accomplish that in 1 day. 11 women and 7 men have been seated. We understand a man and a woman are Asian. The rest are white. There's 18 total people because there'll be 12 jurors and then 6 alternates who will be seated throughout this trial to listen to the proceedings, Lindsay.
And these men are, of course, charged with aiding and abetting George Floyd's murder in a separate state case scheduled for trial in June. So tell us about these federal charges and how they're different from the state charges.
Yeah, Lindsay, in the state case, the prosecutors are accusing the former officers of what they did. They're accused of being accomplices to Derek Chauvin. In the federal trial, it's a little different. It's about what they didn't do, allegedly. And federal prosecutors say they violated George Floyd's civil rights by not offering him medical aid when he clearly needed it. And those two of the 3 there, King and Tao, are also accused of not stepping in to stop Chauvin from using excessive force when all this unfolded back in May of 2020, Lindsay.
And Alex, what kind of defense do we expect from these men?
Yeah, Lindsay, we expect that in court they will maintain what they've been saying since this whole incident unfolded, that Derek Chauvin was the leader of what happened there that day back in May of 2020, that 2 of the officers were rookies and that the other officer, Tu Tao, was busy holding back the crowd and wasn't able really to see what Derek Chauvin was doing. So essentially what I'm saying is that we expect that they're going to put the blame squarely on Derek Chauvin. Lindsay.
All right, Alex Perez, we will be certainly standing by. I know that you'll stay on top of all of it for us. Thanks so much. Next to the new winter blast tonight, some parts of the country could be waking up tomorrow with wind chills below -10. And tonight there's a state of emergency in the Carolinas ahead of a dangerous ice storm. Rob Marciano is tracking it all for us. Hey, Rob.
Hi, Lindsay. Boy, I tell you, the cold is coming in. That's going to be the most widespread, debilitating element of this entire setup. Over half the country seeing temperatures 15 to 30 degrees below average, and some of the wind chills in the morning are going to be frightening in some cases. Getting to school or to work, some of these numbers are going to be very difficult to bear. -4 in Boston, -1 in Pittsburgh. It's going to feel like -24 in Des Moines, my goodness, and -1 in St. Louis. And this sets the stage for icing across the South, including South Texas tonight. We got winter storm warnings off for Brownsville. You don't see that very often. All the way up to Virginia Beach as well. So a couple of waves developing along this front that gets into the Gulf of Mexico and kind of gets itself going, tapping some moisture there and spreading it across Texas and maybe southeast Louisiana and the panhandle of Florida. But then it throws more moisture up into even colder air into the Carolinas beginning later tonight, really tomorrow morning, but it gets going tomorrow afternoon in through tomorrow night into Saturday morning. Significant icing in the low country of South Carolina. Myrtle Beach will see it. The coastal plains of North Carolina, and winter storm warnings up for the Outer Banks. You don't see that very often either. 2 to 6 inches of snow, Raleigh to Norfolk, but I think it's the icing that's going to be the most dangerous, not just for driving, but potentially seeing some power outages in some of these areas as the cold air settles in. Lindsay?
And we can hear that wind howling. It sounds like take your breath away kind of cold coming up and now. Rob, thanks so much.
You got it.
The FAA has now issued new approvals for aircrafts to land in low visibility conditions at some airports as a result of the concerns that the new 5G signal will interfere with airplanes. ABC's Gio Benitez reports.
Tonight, new progress in the standoff over more powerful 5G signals near airports that airline and air cargo CEOs have warned could lead to catastrophic travel and shipping disruptions. The FAA now clearing nearly 80% of all commercial jets to land in low visibility with current 5G limits in place, including many of the most commonly used Boeing and Airbus airliners like the 737 and A320. The move coming just 48 hours after AT&T and Verizon agreed to keep their upgraded signals 2 miles away from major airports.
This is just a Band-Aid fix. The FAA needs to come up with a permanent solution.
The standoff over concerns that stronger 5G signals could interfere with a plane's radio altimeter, the device pilots use to measure altitude during landings, especially in bad weather with low visibility. Airlines and the FAA have said more safety tests are needed. But the FCC, which regulates 5G, has claimed the service poses no risk to aviation. The FAA is still working on clearing about 20% of plane models, mostly smaller regional jets that make up nearly half of all flights in America.
The fact that we had good weather yesterday was very good for those passengers traveling, but we can't count on that going forward.
Gio, thank you. When we come back, the armed man walking into a major American airport and the deadly police response. The grief-stricken widow, our TJ Holmes, sits down with the wife of Bob Saget for an emotional interview that you'll want to hear. But up next, first it was a pig-to-human heart transplant. Now scientists have performed a pig-to-human kidney transplant. Is this the future of medicine? Our in-depth look coming up next.
It was a scary time. In the 70s, you had multiple bodies showing up in Los Angeles.
There were so many murders happening. You had to have a name for it, serial killer.
There was a human head in there. This was premeditated evil.
We have this clock. This person is going to do this again.
It's me against the killer. Who's going to win?
We'll see who laughs last.
What came next was unlike anything they had ever seen.
She set the standard for what we call now the mothers of the movement.
I can't remember a day that I have been free from the memory of Emmett's death. I will take that hurt to my grave.
The fight in Mrs. Mobley, the warrior in her.
She was willing to go anywhere at any time and speak to anybody.
She was a mourning mother, and she decided that enough was enough.
Let the world see tonight, right after Women of the Movement on ABC.
It was stunning what they're accused of doing to her children. Now, the first network interview with the brother of Lori Daybell. What does he now want you to know?
Jail for the rest of their life is not good enough. Death isn't good enough.
He's pled not guilty. Will she stand trial? Now, see video from that day when Chad and Lori Daybell first met. It's the shocking story you think you know.
Wow.
The 2020 event, Friday night on ABC.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it.
Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
I risked my life. I put my family in danger. If I was caught, they would have put a bullet in my head. But it was the right thing to do. It was the only thing to do.
Terror plot foiled in Garden City, Kansas.
That would have been one of the most deadly acts of domestic terrorism ever in the United States.
It would have been Oklahoma City.
He put his family, himself, in jeopardy for us.
National parks are incredibly safe places. A crime will happen.
Hey, my wife has fallen. She's in really critical condition.
At that time, I thought it was just a tragic accident.
There's still a lot of questions we need to ask.
There were small things that didn't totally add up.
This is 2 lives for Harold that have died now. I was shocked. Something's not right.
Welcome back, everyone. Every day, families face the difficult scenario of deciding what to do when a loved one passes away, whether it's preserving personal items or even organ donation. But what if your loved one's dying wish to donate their organs turns into a phone call about transplanting an animal's genetically modified organ into them? A bizarre but potentially groundbreaking proposal. Our Alex Prochet brings us the story of the Parsons family and the journey they decided to embark on.
Ask around about Jim Parsons. His loved ones will tell you he never met a stranger. Now, his medical contributions will potentially help tens of thousands of people he'll never meet.
Yeah, I know he'd be very proud of what he's accomplished.
Jim is the reason doctors are making a major breakthrough in fighting a huge crisis, a kidney shortage.
It seems like he loved being on bikes.
He loved racing. That was where he spent every minute he possibly could to be on a dirt bike or a street bike.
Our first date was on a bike.
That's Jim's ex-wife, Julie, his sons, Cole and David, his daughter, Allie, and all his kids ride.
I never see a smile as big as whenever he sees me riding a bike.
Sometimes he'd even race along with his children. This was the case in September of last year. He and David were competing in different heats.
I actually crashed and messed up my bike during that race. And as I was taking my motorcycle to the trailer, I saw a helicopter landing in the woods. And I was like, well, somebody's hurt. And then I waited till the race was over and Dad never came back.
Anxiety starting to set in. Then
somebody came up to me and said, your dad's hurt out in the field. So I went over there and they were doing CPR on him next to the helicopter.
The 57-year-old would be declared brain dead, his family grieving and still trying to take next steps. Jim was an organ donor, but doctors deemed him not suitable for donation, which opened the door for a unique opportunity. Doctors at the University of Alabama, Birmingham were poised to conduct the first transplant of a genetically modified pig kidney into a human. The process is called xenotransplantation.
And the whole family agreed that, yes, we wanted Jim to be a part of this amazing study.
And just like that, Jim became their donor. The process is incredibly complicated. With Jim's body on a ventilator, researchers essentially removed his kidneys and replaced them with ones from a gene-edited pig. The first time this has ever been done.
These are organs coming from a pig, but there's a very specific reason why you've chosen this animal.
Absolutely. You know, pigs have a lifespan of around 30 years. So the idea is when you transplant these organs that they will be able to sustain the life of the human for the remainder of their life.
The pig was gene edited to lessen the risk that a human body would reject the organ. It also allows the organs to properly fit inside a body.
The transplant itself, we sewed in both kidneys. That took about 4 hours, about 2 hours for each kidney. And then the remainder of the procedure was following him post-transplant.
The new pig kidneys viable for 77 hours before doctors ended the study, which was then peer-reviewed. Its success potentially paving the way for these kinds of transplants inside living humans, saving lives. Currently, there are more than 90,000 people in need of a new kidney, but doctors say fewer than 25,000 transplants are performed each year.
There is nothing worse than having to see a patient in clinic, knowing that I have a cure for their disease and knowing that there's not enough to go around and that they might die before I can give them that cure.
This seems like it could really potentially fill the gap there.
Without question, our organ shortage is truly a crisis. And so the concept of being able to quite literally have an organ available when someone needs it is the type of radical solution that we've needed for a long time in transplantation.
The study's not without critics. Some animal rights advocates are concerned with the use of pigs.
I mean, we have been trying to overcome the organ shortage for more than 30 years with human organs, and we're just not able to do it. And I think alternative sources like xenotransplantation are really necessary.
Dr. Locke pointing not just to UAB's work, but also a recent heart xenotransplantation, saying that studies on lungs and liver could be next.
So many scientists who have dedicated their lives to this field to get us where we are today, and I am so very hopeful for our patients.
As for Jim Parsons' family, knowing his life's legacy will help save others means the world.
There's no words to describe how awesome it is to know that my dad was a part in saving 100,000 plus people.
That's a heck of a legacy.
Yes, very much so. And I know Jim's very proud of it. He'd probably say, you know, stop talking about me so much now. But yeah, I know he'd be very proud of what he's accomplished.
Alex Brachet, ABC News, New York.
And Lindsay, tonight, doctors at UAB are crediting the work being done all around the world in the field of genetically modified animal organs, and that UAB team is optimistic that they will successfully transplant a genetically modified pig kidney into a living human by the end of this year.
Alex, the implications here are just fascinating, what this could mean, and so grateful for Jim Parsons and his family for
what a legacy, right?
In fact, that is true. Thank you so much, Alex. We appreciate it. Still ahead here on Prime, the FBI raid of a Texas Democratic congressman's home and the questions about what the investigation's all about. The major new request by Ghislaine Maxwell's legal team and a discovery at the bottom of the ocean. But first, take a look at this terrifying incident. A reporter at a West Virginia station reporting about weather conditions when suddenly, you see it right there, she's hit by a car. The anchor appeared to show little emotion at the time as the reporter got up and then said it wasn't the first time that she'd been hit by a car. She was all alone without a photographer, and she managed somehow to get up and finish her report, call it adrenaline. But she later got checked out of the hospital and is said to be doing just fine. Tonight, in our tweet of the day, Tori Yorgi has tweeted she's doing fine and clearing up any confusion. She says that the anchor, who got ridiculed by some on social media, could not actually see the video of the incident as it was happening.
It's an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive? Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new hunt wherever you get your podcasts.
It was a scary time.
In the 70s, you had multiple bodies showing up in Los Angeles.
There were so many murders happening. Had to have a name for it, serial killer.
There was a human head in there. This was premeditated evil.
We have this clock. This person is going to do this again.
It's me against the killer. Who's going to win?
We'll see who laughs last.
What came next was unlike anything they had ever seen.
World News Now.
And America This Morning.
The best new videos.
Breaking news overnight.
Your money and concerns about inflation.
The pandemic is not over.
The stories people are talking about.
You don't want to shave your legs? Don't. I was gonna say. And what to expect in the day ahead. From the top of the world, baby!
ABC World News Now and America This Morning.
Weekday mornings starting at 2 a.m. Eastern.
Up all night to keep you up to date.
This is American history. A violent white mob, a brutal attack, 300 black Americans killed right here in America. Now, it is time to uncover Tulsa's buried truth. The gripping story brought to light in a new podcast from ABC News. Available now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.
When you wake up in the morning, when you wake up in the morning, darling, I'll be by your side. I'll be there by your side. I'll be everything you wanted. I'll be there by your side. If you need a light to shine it, hold up your hand, let the stars shoot again, let the light shine in through the dark.
Good morning, America.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
Welcome back, everyone. Now to a remarkable new discovery in the South Pacific. A rare stretch of pristine coral reef has been found off the coast of Tahiti, and it could be a clue that more healthy reefs are still out there. We take a deep dive by the numbers. 2 miles, that's the length of this stunning reef of giant rose-shaped corals, making it one of the most extensive healthy coral reefs on record, according to UNESCO. You can see it in this gorgeous video there. Most of the world's known corals are in relatively shallow waters, but this reef is deep, between 115 and 230 feet below the surface in the so-called twilight zone of the ocean. New technologies have only recently allowed scientists to explore these depths. The team we see here spent 200 hours studying this reef, and they believe that its depth may have actually been what protected it from the damaging effects of human activity and also climate change. And while this is good news, globally, our planet has lost about half, 50%, of its known coral reefs since the 1950s, and the Earth's warming seems to be accelerating that loss. White coral like that has died off. And finally, the world's coral reefs only cover 0.2% of the planet's seafloor, and yet they support about 25% of all marine species. They're vital to coastal protection and the food of hundreds of millions of people worldwide. And we still have lots to get to here on Crime Tonight. The new warning parents of young babies should know about. And we've been following a 19-year-old who just became the youngest woman to fly solo around the world. Her remarkable journey coming up. But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
Powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
It was an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new hunt wherever you get your podcasts.
Now streaming on ABC News Live 2020. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime 2020. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
National parks are incredibly safe places. Crime will happen.
Hey, Mama. My wife has fallen. She's in really critical condition.
At that time, I thought it was just a tragic accident.
There's still a lot of questions we need to ask.
There were small things that didn't totally add up.
This is 2 lives for Harold that have died now. I was shocked. Something's not right.
Admit it.
These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart that he did this.
It's the time of suspicion.
The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
President Biden is facing backlash over comments he made yesterday about Russia and a possible invasion in Ukraine.
Russia will be held accountable if it invades, and it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion and then we end up having a fight about what to do and not do, etc.
The president tried to clarify what he meant.
But there is no doubt, let there be no doubt at all, that if Putin makes this choice, Russia will pay a heavy price.
The White House fully aware the president's comments triggered alarm among European allies and inside Ukraine, too.
Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, after meeting with U.S. allies in Berlin, says the U.S. stands firm.
It's bigger than a conflict between two countries. It's bigger than Russia and NATO. It's a crisis with global consequences.
Secretary Blinken, of course, meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov on Friday as the time for diplomacy seems to be running out.
News this evening about a deadly police shooting near the airport in San Francisco. Police responding to a call of a man carrying 2 guns near a train station at the airport. Officers saying they tried to de-escalate the situation. The suspect allegedly threatening them. The officers opening fire when they say he kept advancing toward them. Train service was temporarily suspended. The airport was not affected.
The FBI won't say what agents were looking for when they conducted court-authorized searches at the home and office of a Texas congressman, Henry Cuellar.
This footage showing the federal agents taking items out of the house. The FBI confirmed it was a court-authorized operation.
The Democratic congressman says he will cooperate with any investigation. Jeffrey Epstein's former companion, Ghislaine Maxwell, is now asking for a new trial.
In a letter to the judge, Ghislaine Maxwell's attorneys said they filed a motion for a new trial under seal. It's based on post-verdict statements to the press by 2 jurors who said they disclosed their experience with sexual abuse during deliberations and may have influenced the trial's outcome. Federal prosecutors have 2 weeks to respond. Maxwell was convicted of serving up minors for Jeffrey Epstein to abuse.
Some of the crippling financial burdens on Puerto Rico appear to be lifting. A judge approving the U.S. territory's plan to exit the bankruptcy it entered in 2017, reducing $33 billion of debt by 80%. It also saves the island $50 billion in debt payments. Puerto Rico's Governor Pedro Pierluisi said, while the plan isn't perfect, it represents a great step for the economic recovery of the island. In recent years, Puerto Rico's financial crisis was further deepened by a series of earthquakes, hurricanes, and the pandemic.
A recall and warning today about several items for babies. First, a line of loungers is now being investigated in the deaths of 2 infants. Parents are urged to stop using the Leach Co. Podster, Podster Plush, Bumsy, and Podster Playtime. The Consumer Product Safety Commission says in separate cases, a 2-week-old baby and a 4-month-old died in the loungers. The agency says the babies changed position in the podsters and suffocated when their noses and mouths were covered up by the podster or another object. Also, 300,000 Frigg silicone pacifiers are being recalled because of a choking risk. According to the Consumer Product Safety Commission, the silicone part can detach from the plastic shield of the pacifier. Frigg received more than 200 reports of this occurring in the U.S. and other countries. There have been no reports of any injuries. Parents, however, are being urged to throw away the pacifiers and reach out to the company for a refund.
Welcome back. Now to a remembrance of Bob Saget. The beloved actor's widow, Kelly Rizzo, broke her silence and sat down with ABC's TJ Holmes for an emotional conversation about the comedian's final days and the outpouring of love she's received from his TV family.
Well, everything that I've been surrounded by has been a reminder of him and, you know, memory of him. And so it's been very, very sad, but also very beautiful.
Bob Saget, affectionately known as America's dad.
Super Dad, flying out the door. Super Dad, you can eat right off my floors.
But to Kelly Rizzo, Bob Saget was a best friend, a travel buddy, her husband, the love of her life.
I presume you have been asked a lot over the past 10 days the question, how you're doing or how you're holding up.
I was telling people today that today is really almost the first day that, you know, there's only so many tears, like your body will let you cry.
We met near their LA home, just a week and a half removed from Saget's sudden passing at a hotel in Florida where he had just started his comedy tour. Rizzo says he was scheduled to come home to her the next day.
What was the last text?
Just, I love you so much and I can't wait to see you tomorrow, and I love you so much and can't wait to see you tomorrow.
What was the last conversation, phone call?
He was just on his way home or back to his hotel and just was telling me what a wonderful show he had and how it was so amazing, and he was happy and just loving what he did. It made him so happy to just bring laughter to people.
Rizzo describes it as complete sadness and shock and utter disbelief upon getting the news of her otherwise healthy husband's death.
He seemed to be a very healthy dude. Was there any health concern that you know of?
All I'll point to is, once again, that last post of his where he just said he felt like he was 26 again.
But feeling good, he had talked on stage, I believe, about having COVID December, January.
That was not anything serious. He was great.
Saget seemed great, writing on social media the night of what would be his final show, "I'm back in comedy like I was when I was 26. I guess I'm finding my new voice and loving every moment of it."
He just wanted to spread love and laughter, and he did it so amazingly, and I'm just so proud of him because he truly brought people together. And I mean, he was just so wonderful. I was just so honored to be his wife and to be able to be a part of it and bring him any bit of happiness that I could, because he deserved it so much.
What would you like to share that we weren't privy to that you would like for us to know about Bob?
He had the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known. He put everybody first. He did everything for everybody. If you had a problem, he was the first person that was going to take care of it and help you. And he was just the most caring and kind and thoughtful person. He was so thoughtful. He was just the most absolutely wonderful husband that I ever could have dreamed of.
Rizzo calls their love story a whirlwind that started after the two met the modern way. He DM'd her on social media. And after dating 3 years, they married in 2018, with Saget turning their ceremony into a bit of a comedy act.
Please tell me, what is going on in that picture? What are you doing?
Oh, gosh. Bob did, like, a minute of stand-up, like, during our vows. And he just made me laugh so hard.
So grateful for the laughs and love that last summer Rizzo decided a tattoo in Bob's honor would be a sweet gesture.
It's a little B for Bob. I was getting some other tattoos. I have a lot. And I just wanted to get a little something for him. I came home with it, and I surprised him. I'm like, honey, look, I got a B. And he's like, well, why'd you do that? I'm like, well, I thought it was nice, you know, I got a tattoo for you, you know? And he's like, well, why didn't you tell me before? I'm like, well, I wanted it to be a surprise. He goes, yeah, but I would have given you my signature bee. And I was like, oh, man, why didn't I think of that? And he's like, see, you should have asked me before. And he goes, well, you can redo it. I'm like, honey, that's not how tattoos work.
Rizzo also admired how Saget loved his 3 daughters.
He was the best father to his girls. They adore him, and they're his life. He loved them so much, and I love them so much. And all he cared about was helping people and being a good friend and being a good dad and being a good husband.
Rizzo says Saget's 3 passions were his daughters, his comedy, and his cause. For decades, a champion for SRF, the Scleroderma Research Foundation, helping to raise millions and honoring his sister, who died of the autoimmune disorder in 1994. His friends are now honoring his work with the foundation. John Mayer and Candace Cameron Bure designed sweatshirts, one saying, "Love like Jesus, hug like Bob Saget," with all proceeds going to the SRF.
People went crazy for it. This one's very special because if you knew Bob, you know he gave the best hugs.
Come on, give your father a big hug.
Minnie's crazy about you. She loves to hug. This is your kind of dog.
All right, come on in. Again, come in.
Oh, jeez.
I keep hearing about these hugs, these Bob Saget hugs.
It was like a very deep, meaningful hug, and then he would like rest his head on your shoulder.
Rizzo now grateful for the people that started out as his Full House TV family, but became his real-life family unit.
I'm so proud to have been able to raise these girls and know them since they were like my girls. I'm out there and I'm really seeing the world, and I got thousands of people, and there's something that this show has broken grounds of. I couldn't be prouder if I was your own dad, and I love you.
His fake family became his real family.
Every single one of them has been so kind and supportive, and they've been there every step of the way, and they've just assured me that they'll be there for me. And I know that would make Bob very happy.
Some laughter in the midst of the tears there. Our thanks to TJ Holmes for bringing us that. And switching gears now, what did you do when you were 19 years old? Most likely not as much as Zara Rutherford, who just flew into the record books by flying around the world by herself. Our Maggie Rulli has been following her incredible journey all along.
With her wheels touching down in Belgium, Zara Rutherford is making history as the youngest woman to ever fly solo around the world.
The moment the wheels leave the ground, it's like this new sense of freedom.
5 months ago, she embarked on this epic journey to inspire young women to pursue their dreams and encourage interest in aviation and science, 2 fields typically dominated by men.
I am flying a Shark Microlight. It's a pretty small plane. Here I'll show you some of the wings. And here is my screen. You can see I'm at 6,500 feet at the moment.
Just her plane, and the great big open world underneath her.
I'm in Saudi Arabia. There's about 3 hours in the air right now, so there's nothing around me.
We followed along on her trip, charting a path over 41 countries and 5 continents.
Hi Maggie. Right now I'm flying from Indonesia to Sri Lanka. It's a long water flight over the Indian Ocean. I'm a little bit bored, I won't lie. It's been a pretty easy flight so far.
Some flights were easy, others brought big challenges. From maintenance,
I had a flat tire in Singapore on the Christmas day,
to visas.
I'm in Nome, Alaska right now. I've been stuck here for about a week because I've been waiting for my passport.
To navigating geopolitics.
North Korea's over that way. I'm not allowed to get too close to it because they don't like small airplanes flying around.
And weather.
Had to land, deviate because of some rain showers that were blocking the valley.
A lot of weather.
It is minus 18 degrees Celsius today. And my hands are literally so cold.
She tells us it was in Russia where she realized the potential danger of what she was doing.
There's like nothing. There's no roads, there's no animals, there's no trees. I didn't see a tree for over a month. And it was just like, this is all on me now. If anything goes wrong, I don't have anyone to fall back on. I don't have a safety net.
You've had to conquer so many fears to get to where you are. How do you do it?
When you're flying along and suddenly this challenge comes up, I can't say, I'm done, I'm out, I give up. You have to still land the plane. You have to make sure that you get down on the ground safely.
Zara's dad, Sam, tells us she's been tackling her fears from a young age, and he and his wife have always encouraged her to fly high.
We've been telling both our children this since they were born, is that they are capable of everything and anything.
Both of her parents are certified pilots, and Zara started flying in small planes with them when she was just 3 or 4 months old.
Frequently, of course, she'd be given the opportunity to sit in the front, to start with, of course, on about 6 cushions, to be able to manipulate the controls and move the aircraft around.
A hunger for adventure from an early age.
Through the years, I've been very fortunate.
Finding inspiration from the pioneering women who came before her.
I get Amelia Earhart comparisons a lot. I wouldn't compare myself to her because what she did is out of this world. I mean, the thought of flying around the world without a GPS, without satellite communication systems, I could never do that.
Before starting her trip, she reached out to the woman whose record she was attempting to break, Shaista Waiz.
The first thing that she asked me is it okay if I break your record? I said, Zara, of course it's okay. Records are meant to be broken, but I'm going to do everything I can to help you.
Shaista's first flight was as a baby when her family fled Afghanistan in the late 80s. But it wasn't until age 29 that Shaista defied her family's expectations and set a new goal for women in aviation like Zara.
I just felt like in the airplane, I could just be whoever I am, and I'd be accepted, and I would be able to just fly.
The power of flight changed Shaista and Zara, and now both women want to harness the freedom of flight to inspire and help other young women inside and outside the cockpit.
I'm hoping to encourage more girls to get into aviation and STEM, so that's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I do get some messages on Instagram and Facebook saying, you've encouraged me to start flying. Is that pretty cool? Yeah.
Her father says that even though her flight around the world has just ended, her impact on the world is just beginning.
This is a platform for her to do whatever she wants to do with her life. And this is very definitely not the end of something, but the beginning of something.
Maggie Burley, ABC News, London.
Keep flying high, Zara. What an inspiration to us all. Thank you to Maggie for that. And before we go today, on our image of the day, take a look at this man walking through a sunflower field in Thailand. Notice the matching sunflower yellow shirt. I wonder if he did that on purpose. Cool picture and some inspiration that perhaps spring is not far around the bend. Let us hope. That is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Coming up the next hour, the grisly discovery at the Canadian-U.S. border, and later how sound can help your mental state, according to a top music producer. We'll talk to him coming up.
More Americans choose ABC News, America's #1 news source. This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back. We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
Admit it, these days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
The ladies you love, the hottest topics happening now. There's only one place to find it all.
You guys are having the hard conversations. I love The View.
The most watched #1 daytime talk show is The View. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It was a scary time.
In the 70s, you had multiple bodies showing up in Los Angeles.
There were so many murders happening. You had to have a name for it, serial killer.
There was a human head in there. This was premeditated evil.
You have this clock. This person is going to do this again.
It's me against the killer. Who's going to win?
We'll see who laughs last.
What came next was unlike anything they had ever seen.
ABC News honored winner of 9 Edward R. Murrow Awards, more than any other network, including winning for the 3rd straight year the award for overall excellence in television. ABC News is America's #1 news source. With so much at stake, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 newscast and the #1 program on television.
Hey everyone, I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We're monitoring several developments here at ABC News at this hour. Police along the Canadian-U.S. border say they found 4 bodies frozen, including an infant and teen. They believe that they died because of exposure during a blizzard and freezing temperatures, but police are still referring to them as victims. It's still unclear why they were out during the storm. 2 people tonight have been arrested in the UK in connection with that awful synagogue hostage standoff in Texas. They were taken in for questioning, according to police in Manchester. 2 teens were arrested last weekend, you might remember, but they were released. And a Miami to London flight turned around just 2 hours into the air after a passenger became unruly. Police say it happened because a female passenger seated in first class would not comply with wearing a mask. The flight was canceled and 129 people were forced to rebook. Now to the White House, backtracking just one day after President Biden said a minor incursion in Ukraine by Russia might be okay. Senior White House correspondent Mary Bruce reports from the White House.
At the White House today, President Biden tried to put out a firestorm of criticism after these comments about a possible Russian invasion of Ukraine sparked international concern.
Russia will be held accountable if it invades, and it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion and then we end up having a fight about what to do and not do, etc.
Early today, reading from a prepared statement, the president tried to clarify what he meant.
If any assembled Russian units move across the Ukrainian border, that is an invasion. But it will be met with severe and coordinated economic response that I've discussed in detail with our allies, as well as laid out very clearly for President Putin. There is no doubt, let there be no doubt at all, that if Putin makes this choice, Russia will pay a heavy price.
The White House fully aware the president's comments triggered alarm among European allies and inside Ukraine, too. Ukrainian President Zelensky tweeting, "There are no minor incursions and small nations, just as there are no minor casualties and little grief from the loss of loved ones." Meeting with U.S. allies in Germany ahead of a critical sit-down with the Russians, Secretary of State Blinken tried to reassure America's partners.
If any Russian military forces move across the Ukrainian border and commit new acts of aggression against Ukraine, that will be met with a swift, severe, united response from the United States and our allies and partners.
Our thanks to Mary Bruce. The House Select Committee investigating the January 6th Capitol attack is now seeking information from former President Trump's daughter, Ivanka. As lawmakers ramp up their probe, the Supreme Court denying a request by the former president to block the release of hundreds of White House records to lawmakers. ABC's Elizabeth Schulze has the latest from Washington.
The congressional probe into the January 6th insurrection is now seeking answers from former President Trump's family. The House Select Committee asking Trump's daughter Ivanka to cooperate with its investigation. Committee Vice Chair and Wyoming Congresswoman Liz Cheney recently told ABC News Ivanka was with the president while he watched on TV as his supporters violently stormed the Capitol to disrupt the certification of the 2020 election results.
We have firsthand testimony that his daughter Ivanka went in at least twice to ask him to please stop this violence.
ABC News previously reported the committee received mobile phone records of the former president's son, Eric, and of Kimberly Guilfoyle, the girlfriend of Donald Trump Jr.
My father has started a movement, and this movement will never, ever die.
The escalation in the January 6th investigation comes after the Supreme Court dealt a major defeat to the former president. In an 8-1 ruling, the Supreme Court upheld an appeals court decision, rejecting Trump's executive privilege claims. The National Archive says it's now in the process of turning over hundreds of Trump's White House documents to House investigators, including presidential diaries, visitor logs, speech drafts, and handwritten notes. The committee calling the Supreme Court's action a victory for the rule of law and American democracy.
Our thanks to Elizabeth Schulze. Continuing on the topic now of former President Trump, today a Georgia prosecutor has requested a special grand jury in the ongoing probe of possible criminal behavior by the former president during the 2020 election. In a letter to a judge, the Fulton County District Attorney wrote that the move is needed because, quote, a significant number of witnesses and prospective witnesses have refused to cooperate with the investigation absent a subpoena requiring their testimony. The investigation was officially launched last February after Trump was heard on a recorded phone call pushing the Georgia Secretary of State to find the exact number of votes he needed to win the state in the 2020 presidential election. In response to the request, Trump said his call was, quote, perfect, and denied saying anything wrong. Next to the new winter blast tonight, some parts of the country could be waking up tomorrow with wind chills below -10. And tonight there's a state of emergency in the Carolinas ahead of a dangerous ice storm. Rob Marciano is tracking it all for us. Hey, Rob.
Hi, Lindsay. Boy, I tell you, the cold is coming in. That's going to be the most widespread, debilitating element of this entire setup. Over half the country seeing temperatures 15 to 30 degrees below average, and some of the wind chills in the morning are going to be frightening in some cases. Getting to school or to work, some of these numbers are going to be very difficult to bear. -4 in Boston, -1 in Pittsburgh. It's going to feel like -24 in Des Moines, my goodness, and -1 in St. Louis. And this sets the stage for icing across the South, including South Texas tonight. We got winter storm warnings off for Brownsville. You don't see that very often. All the way up to Virginia Beach as well. So a couple of waves developing along this front that gets into the Gulf of Mexico and kind of gets itself going, tapping some moisture there and spreading it across Texas and maybe southeast Louisiana and the panhandle of Florida. But then it throws more moisture up into even colder air into the Carolinas beginning later tonight, really tomorrow morning, but it gets going tomorrow afternoon in through tomorrow night into Saturday morning. Significant icing in the low country of South Carolina. Myrtle Beach will see it. The coastal plains of North Carolina, and winter storm warnings up for the Outer Banks. You don't see that very often either. 2 to 6 inches of snow, Raleigh to Norfolk, but I think it's the icing that's going to be the most dangerous, not just for driving, but potentially seeing some power outages in some of these areas as the cold air settles in. Lindsay?
And we can hear that wind howling. It sounds like take your breath away kind of cold coming up and now. Rob, thanks so much.
You got it.
From restaurants to retailers, it seems that we see QR codes just about everywhere these days. You just point your phone's camera at the barcodes, and then you're directed to everything from menus to no-contact payment. But the FBI is now out with a new warning about them. Here's ABC's Janae Norman.
The new warning from the FBI urging caution for consumers when using QR codes. The agency says criminals are tampering with some codes to steal information and money, altering both the digital and physical square barcodes and replacing them with malicious ones. In Texas, officials in San Antonio, Austin, and Houston alerting the public of fake QR codes found on parking meters. So, how's it work, and how easily could you potentially become a victim? In October, we enlisted the help of Mark Ostrowski with cybersecurity firm Checkpoint to show you what could happen if you click on a bad website linked to a QR code.
I created this QR code you see here.
I scanned the QR code just as I would at a restaurant or store. It takes me to this site that looks completely legit and asks for my information to complete my payment. after I hit send.
It's thanking me for my purchase.
The information went where it's supposed to go to.
Yeah.
In this particular scenario, that just sent an email to me.
Like literally instantaneously.
Instantaneous, with all the information, right? The CCV code, the credit card number, email, address, all the personal information that I would need, maybe to assume your identity somewhere else.
So what are the concerns with QR codes? Because QR codes themselves aren't a problem. It's where it leads you to.
Exactly. So QR codes themselves are totally secure. But where the QR code takes you, or who's created the QR code for malicious reasons, is what actually creates the scenario that we went through, where it's redirecting you somewhere you shouldn't go.
Good warning for us all to be aware of. Our thanks to Janae for that. From restaurants, retailers, actually, we were just talking about that. Now we want to talk about new details and new questions into the 2003 Tiger attack that left iconic Siegfried and Roy's stage show, brought it to an abrupt end. An Apple podcast is revealing information from the police investigation into the attack that left Roy fighting for his life. ABC's Deborah Roberts has a story.
A new podcast taking listeners behind the velvet curtain, reporting new details about the police investigation into that tragic night in 2003 when a nearly 400-pound white tiger mauled and nearly killed Roy Horn, ending the famous Vegas Siegfried and Roy act.
We went into that investigation not even knowing what we were looking for. We didn't even know where to begin. We always assume that there's a possibility of a crime.
On Wild Things, an Apple TV Plus podcast, investigators telling how they explored all kinds of theories as Roy fought for his life, including whether the attack may have been provoked in what amounts to attempted murder.
There was some discussion about, could animal rights activists been involved in some kind of crime, somebody in the crowd, somebody in the staff. We discussed the possibility of being trace evidence. We were just looking for anything that could have prompted this tiger to do what he did.
Our reporting showed that some of the theories that they had were absolutely bonkers.
Roy was left partially paralyzed, but always defended his tiger manticore, insisting it was never an attack, but an attempt by the massive tiger to carry him to safety after sensing that Roy was having a stroke.
Yeah, that's good. It's like with everything with animals. You can take nothing for granted, even if you think you know it all. It's physical risk.
A government investigation ended in 2005 with no conclusion about the cause of the mauling. I sat down with Siegfried and Roy back in 2019 for their final interview, 16 years after the incident.
You've been in each other's lives for 50 years.
I said, I love you. So, and he says, if I would have to do it again, I would do everything again the same way. I regret nothing.
Whatever happened on stage that night, it was the end of an electrifying era on the Vegas Strip. The German duo, who dazzled audiences for years, brought their magic back to the stage only one other time after the incident, yet never stopped believing in the magic they created for the millions who made Siegfried and Roy Vegas royalty.
Our thanks to Deb Roberts for that. Renowned music producer and performer Major has collaborated with top talent such as Justin Bieber, Drake, Frank Ocean, Ciara, and T-Pain, among many others. He is now here to discuss his new Audible original, Major Frequency, an innovative and profound journey exploring the healing powers of intentional frequency. Let's take a quick soothing listen. Major, thank you so much for being here. How should I feel after hearing that, first of all? Like, right off the top, I wasn't sure.
Blessings. Well, hopefully you feel more present. And, a lot of people these days have been struggling with a lot of anxiety and just with the crazy times. So hopefully it gives you just a sense of peace.
Okay, all right. Well, I think that most people know and experience how music can, in fact, improve your mood. But can you elaborate on the role that different sound frequencies play when it comes to wellness and also mindfulness?
Absolutely. Well, I believe that our bodies have infinite healing potential already built in. And just like when you get a cut, right, your body sends millions of cells to that spot to fix it. And when we get the right food, when we get the right diet, our body, right sleep, our body naturally heals itself. I believe the music is the next extension of that. And when we get the right frequencies, it helps our bodies to go into that natural state where it actually heals itself. So people call it healing music, but it's actually, you know, allowing your body to be in that state where it restores itself.
And what caused you to actually explore this?
I'm a cancer survivor. I went through leukemia. I'm still going through it, but during that process, I started, you know, I used traditional medicine as well as looking for other things for healing and wellness. And when I got introduced to the yoga community, once I moved to California, I started hearing about sound as healing. And I was like, that's a little far out. And then I started meeting doctors and friends in the science community who had shared the same ideas. And so it just felt natural for me to incorporate it into my music, seeing that I was already working with so many great artists.
And you reference Nikola Tesla multiple times in his idea that one should, quote, think about the universe in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. What do you think that he meant by that?
Well, I believe that Nikola Tesla, he created alternating current, right? Which is the way that I'm talking to you now, which is the way that anyone is watching us because of the power that's happening now. And someone who was able to see into something that was here the whole time, electricity, that charge, and harness it, definitely had an insight into many secrets about what we can do. And so I believe that this harnessing of frequency, being very specific, it'll be able to one day be prescriptive as audio. And we tapped a bit into that, into the major frequency series, where each song has a specific intention and reason that you're supposed to listen to it and why. And so I believe that's the advancement on what Tesla and a lot of these guys were teaching us. Even the ancient Egyptians knew about this.
And speaking of Egypt, you traveled to 10 different locations in total, from Peru to Jamaica and also Egypt, to research the healing powers of sound. What led you to choose these specific locations?
These were all places along my journey. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. My family's from Jamaica, and I spent the summers there. I traveled to Machu Picchu to study the ancient sound healing techniques, Egypt as well. So all of these places were a part of the journey that we took in learning about this sound healing.
What effect do you want this music to have on the listener? What do you hope that they'll take away from it?
Well, I mean, I believe that the universal thing that we all want is love, and that we all need. That's the universal truth in my perspective. So in some way, if it helps you to be more in harmony with yourself, which gives you greater harmony and love with those around you, then even just 1%, then our mission is accomplished. But each episode has a different intention. So, you know, there's some of them to get you energized. You listen to that frequency. There's some of them if you want to go to sleep and relax. There's some of them if you want emotional freedom. So each one is very specific. But overall, we want you to feel love.
So Major, we are going to check out Major Frequency in the hopes of feeling some of that love and those good vibes. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We appreciate you talking to us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And still to come, the Jamaican going to the Olympics for skiing, and the man giving out free hugs.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any place else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast, now streaming on ABC News Live.
It was a scary time in the 70s. You had multiple bodies showing up in Los Angeles.
There were so many murders happening. You had to have a name for it, serial killer.
There was a human head in there. This was premeditated evil.
We have this clock. This person is going to do this again.
It's me against the killer. Who's going to win?
We'll see who laughs last.
What came next was unlike anything they had ever seen.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
I risked my life. I put my family in danger. If I was caught, they would have put a bullet in my head. But it was the right thing to do. It was the only thing to do.
Terror plot foiled in Garden City, Kansas.
That would have been one of the most deadly acts of domestic terrorism ever in the United States.
It would have been Oklahoma City.
He put his family, himself, in jeopardy for us.
Assault on the Capitol, the ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu, now streaming. This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back. We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
National parks are incredibly safe places, but crime will happen.
Hey, my wife has fallen. She's in really critical condition.
At that time, I thought it was just a tragic accident.
There's still a lot of questions we need to ask.
There were small things that didn't totally add up.
This is 2 lives for Harold that have died now. I was shocked. Something's not right.
Welcome back. We're tracking several headlines around the world. A huge explosion in western Ghana today left this massive crater after a motorcycle collided with a vehicle carrying explosives, according to authorities there. The town was devastated by the explosions. Homes leveled and roofs torn off. Unverified reports suggest there could be more than 100 dead. Jamaica is making history at this year's Winter Olympics. 38-year-old Benjamin Alexander is the first Jamaican ever to qualify for alpine skiing at a Winter Olympics. He says he was inspired by the iconic Jamaican bobsled team made famous in that movie Cool Runnings. The athlete and former DJ was born in Britain to a Jamaican father and a British mother. And listen to this, he only took up the sport 6 years ago. Now he's going to the Olympics. In France, an effort to clean up the city of love was announced by local authorities after the hashtag Trashed Paris gained momentum on Twitter last year. The poor state of some of the city's public spaces coming under fire. Officials call the criticism an attempt to smear Mayor Anne Hidalgo, who is expected to run for president. Nevertheless, on Tuesday, the first part of their Manifesto for Beauty went into effect, pledging to remove some of those eyesores, such as ugly or useless street furniture, graffiti, and replacing damaged street fixtures. We turn now to our weekly segment, TikTok, where we interview some of our favorite TikTokers, taking a closer look at the story behind the sensation. And you may have seen our next guest on your For You page, holding up a sign while blindfolded as he seeks to bring his community together and raise mental health awareness by giving out free hugs. Let's take a look.
Oh, okay. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
You feel like nobody cares sometimes?
Oh, yeah. That's exactly how my life is right now.
I'm thinking of you, okay?
Thank you.
So sweet. Zachary Daranowski, we are giving you virtual hugs tonight. Welcome to the show. Through your online presence, you have impacted not only those that you come across on the street, but millions of viewers as well. What inspired you to use TikTok as a tool to spread this kind of awareness?
Thank you so much for having me on. And I started this TikTok journey, I guess, about 1.5 years ago. I was in medical school in Sydney, Australia. And originally, TikTok was my way to cope. It was a cry for help almost. I used the videos to create mental health awareness because I was going through a lot. Being alone on the other side of the world, going through a 6-year relationship breakup, medical school being challenging, COVID, etc. And it just evolved into something so much more. So now I create videos that bring mental health awareness, unconditional love, and spreading kindness, and more so because I felt empty and alone, and I don't want people to feel the same.
And many of your videos, of course, address mental health struggles, a topic that has garnered a lot of attention, particularly since the pandemic. According to the DC, they have seen significant increases in symptoms of anxiety and depressive disorders during 2020 and 2021. What do you hope that viewers take away from your message?
That they're not alone. that emotions and feelings are okay to express, and the only way that we can get through it is knowing that our vulnerability is our superpower. And when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, that allows us to relate and empower others to do the same.
You know what I find so interesting, too, because you were doing all of this during a time when people were concerned about getting near, especially to strangers, right? But I think that a lot of times people's need for that closeness superseded their fear about COVID. Would you say that that's true?
Yeah, and the beauty of the flowers and the hugs, I feel like it's a universal language. Love is a currency, and a simple hug can go a long way because we have no idea what people are going through in their everyday lives.
And most of your encounters show just that. These strangers, they're emotional yet and raw. What is it that you think that makes people so willing to share some of their deepest struggles with someone they don't even know at all, that they've just met on the street?
I think it's the blindfold, because that puts me in a very vulnerable position as well. And not seeing them, not seeing the backgrounds or where they come from, and there's no biases. The only conversation that matters is the voice of a stranger and then me listening. So it just really allows it to dial into whatever's going on. And oftentimes people aren't looking for answers. They just want to be heard.
And I guess that's the answer to my next question. Is that why you decided to wear a blindfold? Because then that you would just feel it rather than take anything in visually?
Absolutely. That is exactly why I do that.
I would imagine that other people's stories that they share with you have impacted you as well. How do you take care of yourself and not allow their trauma to really impact you?
That's a really good question. So at first it did take a toll on me, but as you can see in some of the videos, I have a videographer in which we talk every single day about things that go on and just have the conversations as they go. So nothing ever builds up and allows me to not take on too much. And then obviously making time for myself, whether that's meditation, working out, spending time with family and friends, etc.
And you are certainly restoring faith in humanity with the work that you're doing. What do you think is your own personal biggest takeaway from these interactions?
My biggest takeaway is that you have no idea what people are going through. I know that sounds repetitive, but it blows me away at some of the stories that I hear. And the people that I guess have the least want to give the most and are the most empathetic people. So always be kind, hold the door, smile, give a flower, give a hug, call a person you haven't talked to in a while, because it can really make or break someone's day, month, and possibly life.
The people who have the least are willing to give the most. That is quite a poignant moment for us to all, I think, really think about and take in. Zachary Daranowski, we thank you so much for your time and all the love.
Thank you so much for having me on. Have a great day.
You too. That is our show for tonight. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Have a great night.